These are Antonovka apples. Very healthy. They're not huge. I think this is their third year, and they're going to get planted up today. Now, as varieties go, they're a really interesting one. It's originally a Russian variety from the 19th century. Very, very cold resistant, very cold hardy, and they confer a certain amount of cold resistance to anything that's grafted to them if they use as a rootstock. They're an amazing variety and actually breed true from seed, so really, really useful. So I'll show you where we're going to plant them and why. That's all of that batch in the ground. Still got the ones in pots to put in. I'm not going to worry about that today, but all the ones that were in the tray have now been planted. And this is the first one I planted. In terms of location, we are just down from the chicken system, and this is well into what will be the chicken forest eventually. It's rammed with food. I'll show you that in a minute, but there's that one there, and that's the edge of our land. So you can see it's pretty much tucked into the corner. Now, this whole section here, for example, has got alder. It's a flowering currant, but there's a double row of alder all the way along here as the backbone of that shelter belt, and there's a row of holly running behind it, and there'll be other things that like the holly that'll come through eventually, but we just haven't got them in the ground yet. There's also a lot of things like flowering currants. That's a hawthorn, that sort of thing, just as support species right through this whole section. It's very, very densely planted. But inside that, as I say, this is just the outer skin of the shelter belt with an evergreen layer on the outside of it with a load of other trees in support. But inside that, we've got, all of these ones that have got the little yellow caps, and there's a row of them running right through the whole field at, reasonable spacing. This is a Pyrus communis. This is a wild pear. Now, the idea being with this, that we can just leave it as is, or we can graft a name cultivar onto it. So this will grow up into a full height tree. This will, the full canopy tree, and more or less in between those, I've also put one of the Antonovka, and we can do the same thing with this. So we can graft onto that a name cultivar variety, but probably at about chest height, so we get some Antonovka apples lower down that we don't have to worry about harvesting if we don't want to. And then above that, we've got the grafted variety that we can, have the sort of fruit that we want. But I'm really curious about Antonovka. It does have a reputation as being a really good one for making wine and making for pies and so on. So it's a useful apple in its own right. And we've got a load of them. So, that's an Antonovka. That is a wild pear. And as we come through in here, bear in mind this is all inside of the shelter belt. So this is just that to get into the real productive species here. So that is a wild cherry, which again, we can do the same thing as with the Antonovka and the wild pear. Then we've got an Antonovka. We've got, I missed that one. There you go. That's another wild pear. That needs a guard. That's a wild pear. Then, hang on, I've lost where I'm going here. So straight in line, there's a bit of a gap here. I could get another tree in here. Excellent. So, a wild cherry. And, no, here it is. That's why I've missed that. It's because we've got this. That's a monkey puzzle between them. I knew there'd be something there. And then we've got, so just upside of that, we've got these. Now, there's three of these. Those are Morello on semi-dwarfing rootstock, but we'll probably come back to that. So yeah, that's a wild cherry. That's a wild pear. We've got an Antonovka there. Another wild cherry. There's a load of guards. I'll deal with that afterwards. This stuff bounces out the wheelbarrow. It's another wild pear. We've got then another monkey puzzle. We've got, see there's another Antonovka there. We've got a wild pear and a wild cherry really close together. Antonovka, wild pear, where are we? Over here then, Antonovka, and that's a pretty big gap, so I've got room for another tree in there potentially. That's a wild pear, Antonovka, wild pear, and you get the idea. It goes right down into the corner and just up that way a little bit, and then we'll continue with the Antonovka further up because there's also a load of wild pear up there once I get the ones with the pots a little bit bigger, and they'll go in as well. But you get the idea that it's the inner, just inside the shelter belt, so they'll get even a certain amount of benefit from things like the nitrogen fixing ability from the alder, and in time the death of these trees, because these are just in as a shelter belt establishment species. These are basically just in as like a nurse crop, you know, they'll eventually get used for wood and for construction materials. Right, here's one you can see, it's been pegged over so that we're going to manufacture a nice curved beam eventually by the time that gets cut out. But there's a lot of trees in here, you just can't necessarily see them all. So let's have a look. So yeah, that's an Antonovka. Now here we've got a row of sea buckthorn. Now these are those rare imported high yielding large fruit varieties, and there's a whole row of them running through here. So everything to this side of it, now we're into the food forest for the chickens, the poultry forest. And there's loads in here, so let's have a look. Look at that. There are loads of these caterpillars this year. There's thousands of them here. I'm going to watch, look, there's another one. And another one. I've got to be careful where I walk at the moment, there's just so many of them. So if I'm a little bit distracted, that's pots of it. Ah, look at that. A tree. Oh well, I'm glad I found that. That must have bounced out the wheelbarrow. So anyway, there's an Antonovka. Now, if I come, in fact, I'll put that there and come back for it. Otherwise I can't point at stuff. So, you can see here, there's this dwarf comfrey. See how much bees love it? It's a very happy bee. And that is underneath a Siberian pea shrub, which is a really good chicken forage. A few of these are really coming on this year. We've lost quite a few, but I've got thousands of thousands of seeds planted again this year. And that's got a blackcurrant coming through as an understory. And you can see just how much it's starting to really challenge the grass. Amazing stuff. And I mean, there's just loads of it taking over. But in amongst it, we've also got things like, that's a Saskatoon, that'll be an understory. We've got, let's have a look. That one might have failed, but that's meant to be another Siberian pea. Yeah, that looks like it might come back from lower down, but we'll see. If not, I've got plenty to replace it, and so on. Yeah, look at that one. That's the best one we've got. Look at that. That's a lovely thing, and that's 3 years old, I think. It's coming on really strongly, and that's got, again, a little tiny currant under it. It's got the comfrey starting to spread, and so on. All those canes there, those are soft fruit canes, so there's a row of red currant, a row of black currant, and the beginnings of a row of white currant. So again, chickens do very well under them. They love the fruit when it drops, but they leave the trees alone, the bushes alone. They tend to not mess with them. And it's just masses and masses of soft fruit. So we've got, hang on, let me show you. There's the, see, this is where it's a little bit more sparse here, but we've got Saskatoon, that's an Antonovka. We've got, yeah, that's a Morello, which will be an understory eventually. It's on semi-dwarfing rootstock, but they crop reliably in partial shade. And then under them we've got a currant and a currant. I think they're both black currant. We've got another monkey puzzle as an overstory tree. We've got juniper, and we're back then to the original Antonovka where we started. And that whole side there, it's got a whole shelter belt thing going on as well. It's going to be very, very dense. So basically these Antonovka are the inner edge overstory apple trees that alternate with the wild pear. So we've got really good resilient genetics that even in the event of a major Arctic blast that kills a lot of fruit trees, they'll still keep producing and they'll still keep doing their thing. I mean, that's a lovely looking little cherry tree. But anyway, oh yeah, I put these in the winter and didn't know how many had come. They look really healthy and healthy. I'm pleased with them. So yeah, we're starting to expand upwards in this direction now. So there'll be hazel coming through, similar sort of height to the Siberian pea, and there's a lot more of them to go in as well. But in amongst the Antonovka, so up to about here maybe, there's a lot of understory to come in, but through here there'll be a load of chestnuts coming through next year as well. We got them in as seed, and that's next year's plantings. So that's nuts, fruit as overstory, and then a load of understory species of other fruits, all within the chicken system. It's a huge amount of food for them, because chickens originally were a jungle bird. They do very well in woodland, scratching around and so on, especially with this amount of comfrey. I mean, coming through here in summer, they're just not going to be able to take that out. We haven't got that many chickens. And then obviously we've got the Antonovka continuing down with the wild pear through that whole system and then beginning out the other side. So that's a huge amount of fruit production, and the capacity to graft with better genetic varieties, very highly bred varieties, but just on the inner skin of the shelter belt. Yeah, I love shelter belt plantings. It's like free production. It's phenomenal. But yeah, that's where we're putting the Antonovka.